Hi, in this video, we'll talk about how to uh, level resources after the status date for an in-progress project. And before we do that, we'll also talk about the need for doing that. So here we have a project plan for a simple software project, which includes, development. Let me include the summary task so we can see the overall flow here. So we have one deliverable, which is installed software, one level one deliverable. The second one is project documentation. And so in the software part is the development design and follows the regular waterfall cycle of requirements design, software development, test, and installation. And in parallel, there is documentation development. There are a couple Hammock activities, and there's one recurring activity for project review reporting. And the documentation we talked about. So that's the overall structure of this project plan. And so let me hide the summary tasks so that we can focus on activities. And so in this activity, in this plan, the red line here represents the status update, status date, which is set to 8/25/20. And so following that, we have few activities going on, which are shown here with a completion on 11/26. And this is after the status updates have been made up to the status date. And so that resulted in pushing some of the activities further out. So which is pretty clear up here, where you see the gray bars represent the baseline, and the blue bars represent the actual progress, actual start and completions. And so you see as activities take longer, they result in pushing out in time the following activities or successors. And so that successively pushes out the activities further and further away from their original planned start and end times. And so down here for this activity 162, it got pushed out from, originally scheduled. It should have been completed by August 14th, and here it is getting pushed out beyond August 8/25, which is our status date. So only part of it gets done before that. So when this happens, when we do the status updates, we do not see, or the Microsoft project does not update the resource critical path, which is the path that earlier defined the duration of the project based on project constraints. But since these different paths were affected by different kinds of delays, they might have moved by different amounts. And so we might have resulted, or this would have resulted in an infeasible situation or extra gaps. So to view that, let's just focus on activities that are after the status date. And I guess one way to sort this would be if we were to sort it by, say, finish date. We should see most of the things after the status date is somewhat together. And so by doing that, once I sort here, we do see most of the activities that are left, all the activities that are left after the status date, to have them show up together. And in particular, we are interested in what would be our resource critical path. And really from earlier, before we did the status update, our resource critical path was these three activities, where this tech writer is being used by all three activities, even though they are not in succession in precedence network. This third activity 243, go down here in yellow, that's really a successor of an activity further up. Up here, so I think activity 16, while these two activities, the 35 and 36, are directly linked, but the gap between the two was really because of the resource constraint. So the tech writer works on activity 35, and then on activity 40, and then back on activity 36. So let's focus on this a little bit more. And so here you see the issues that happen in terms of different delays experienced by the different paths in the network. So the TechWriter, this activity 231 is finishing at a certain time, followed by, and then there's a gap, which for this point there's no reason other than the progress updates that were made, and so and then after this activity, if you look at the activity print guides, that really should have taken place after the write project report, but right now it's overlapping. And so this is the issue that has resulted with progress updates. So to keep our plan after the status state feasible, we need to re-level the resources. And so we can do that manually, which is by simply changing the start date for this activity here. And that can be done manually, so we can bring it closer together. And actually, before I do that, let me add some start and finish time so you can see the gaps and overlaps in times also. And that will also help us with seeing that our leveling works to take those gaps out. So as you can see here again, this activity ends at 10:27, 27th of October at 10:24, while this activity is starting on 29th of October at 3:24 p.m. So the time in between is just simply a lost time that needs to be changed. So as I was saying, one way is to just go and reduce, change the dates here. And so for example, I can make this to say 2027, and that moves it very close and almost takes out the gap. There is still a few hours of gap. Actually, we can, I guess, change it all the way to, so we can actually make it exactly 10:24. So one activity finishes and this can start. Oh, I guess the best thing would be to just take it, copy it from here and put it here. And so that is the actual ideal sequence we'd like to see. So that's one way of doing this, by manually updating the dates. If you can figure out your exact resource critical path, you can do it that way. But rather than doing manually, I'd suggest using the Microsoft project capabilities and do leveling after the status state. So for that, we'll go to Resource, Leveling Options, set the leveling option to just do it after the project status state, and status state was 10:25, and so it's really 10:25 end of the day. So we really need to do, or 8:25, sorry, 8:25, August 25th, and so we'll start really on August 26th in terms of leveling. And the end date doesn't really matter because we are not asking for leveling only within the available Slack, so which means if needed, the date can be pushed out by Microsoft Project. Okay, so we define that window for our leveling here, and then we can go in, let me just zoom out a little bit so we can see the impact of the leveling. And then we'll go to level resources, and then we'll only select the resources which are our critical resources. And so we know Assistant PM and TechWriter are already there, plus the software architect. We'll have to hit Control rather than Shift. So holding the Control key, selecting these three resources that are involved in these three particular activities. And then I hit Level Now. And you see the movement happened here, where now these three activities are not overlapping and there's no extra gap. And then we can see the time changes also. So now this activity is finishing at on 27th at 10:24, that's when this next activity starts. Then it finishes the next day, on 24th of November at 10:24, and that's when the following activity starts. So now they are in the sequence that is the correct sequence. So this is how one would go about leveling the activities or the project plan after the status state.